A new report reveals Canada's professional women's sports market doubled in size since 2023 and is on pace to hit $570 million by 2030. That's according to Canadian Women and Sport. So for more, we're going to bring in Alison Sandmeyer-Graves, CEO of Canadian Women and Sport, and also Peter Hodson, of course, still joining us here in studio. Alison, it's good to have you. Thanks for taking the time.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
This is pretty substantial. Can you talk a little bit more about this growth we've seen over the last few years?
You know, when we were looking at this two and a half years ago, Canada was really behind its global counterparts with no professional women's sport teams and leagues playing consistently in this market. Well, Canada is catching up in a hurry with the launch of the Professional Women's Hockey League, the Northern Super League, and coming in 2026, the Toronto Tempo in the WNBA. What this means is the market is booming. This is what we're calling a once-in-a-generation opportunity for all investors, but in this case, we focused on brands to really get into the market, to shape the trajectory of this market, and to capture the upside.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that commercial opportunity that people could really capture right now, that businesses could capture because of this.
Well, one of the really exciting things, again, this particular report, it's the third in a series of annual reports that we've done, really looking at the business case for women's professional sport in this country, which people may not realize has been almost entirely absent in this sport landscape, but for a major tournament in golf and a major tournament in tennis. So this is new space. This is white space for a lot of investors. In this particular report, we focused on brands, really with the focus of engaging brands who might be sitting on the sidelines right now and doing a little bit of a wait and see. We're saying it's time to get in. Our research shows that compared to men's sport, brands who invest in this space are going to see a 25% lift when it comes to brand familiarity, brand sentiment, and purchase consideration. So there's a very compelling case for brands to take a hard look at this.
One question from, I have to take it back down to the individual investor level because I think what you're talking about is big corporations. But we follow a lot of companies that are involved in sports betting, and of course that's been huge. Can you talk about whether the growth in women's betting has been at the same pace?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. That's not something that we looked at in this research, so I'd have to dig into that further. However, what I would say is that betting does represent a terrific opportunity. Obviously, it's a little bit of a disruptor. It's something new that's come into men's sports in sort of a mass betting kind of a fashion in recent years. And with the arrival of that here in Canada, certainly it represents an opportunity for the teams and leagues as well as the fans. And so it's something that we would love to see grow in the years ahead.
You mentioned that 25% lift for investors, and there's also more growth, a further growth trajectory in the years ahead. Have you looked at that and what investors can expect in maybe the next 3 to 5 years?
So we're expecting that the growth trajectory is going to continue. I think, as you mentioned in your opener, we're anticipating or projecting it to hit $570 million by the year 2030. Of course, there's always an opportunity to accelerate that with the right kind of investment in this space. What that means is that groups that are going to get in early are going to have the greatest benefit. And what we believe is going to drive that forward are things like expansion teams in the PWHL and the Northern Super League, growth in broadcast viewership, more of those big showcase games that are filling the large arenas and stadiums, growth in fandom and those game day purchases, whether that's merchandise or tickets. So there's a really diverse mix of activities driving this growth.
Could you talk a little bit about, for investors and for fans, in terms of still, I presume there's a price discount still on whether you want to sponsor a corporate team or whether you actually want to sit in the stadium, and how that gap might be changing over time?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly when compared to the more mature traditional sports. So here, of course, we're all in the Jays fan club right now, cheering them on. Certainly relative to these properties that have been in the market for decades, who've had the opportunity to develop their fan base over that time. to generate sponsors and other media rights deals and things like that that are really driving their business, you're going to see that women's sport is coming in at a different place because it's at most 2 years old. And so what we're really calling for is that targeted investment, that strategic investment and committed investment that is going to help these teams and leagues grow into their full potential. Of course, that's probably going to look different from the get-go as far as if you're a fan, the cost of the tickets, which of course makes it even more accessible to fans and particularly to families to participate in this, and certainly for investors. However, we don't want to come at this really devaluing these properties and coming in assuming that it's going to be, a low entry point, and particularly considering the opportunity that's ahead.
Just before we wrap up here, I know this kind of goes back to we're seeing such an increase since 2023. Obviously, women's sports have been around since before 2023. What changed? Like, what's changed in the last couple of years to really just to see this massive growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, Canada is really echoing what's happening globally. And as I mentioned from the outset, we've been a little bit behind, which gives us an opportunity to look at other markets, whether they're in Europe or in the US, for example, and to see what's possible with women's sport. There is good news coming out, it seems like weekly, in terms of record-breaking viewership, record-breaking ticket sales, just massive sponsorship deals. The athletes are certainly leading on a lot of that. And so we are starting to see that here in Canada. I think that can really give investors confidence in entering this space because Canada is not an isolated example of this, but rather just another exemplar that we're seeing around the world.
Okay.
And really our athletes driving a lot of that too.
So interesting. Thanks so much for your time, Alison. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Alison Sandmeyer-Graves, CEO of Canadian Women and Sport.